Welcome to the AUA at the American University of Armenia. I am Alan Amirkanian. I'm the director of the AUA Acopian Center for the Environment. We are organizing this event in partnership with Swedish Environment Institute and the Ministry of Environment of the Republic of Armenia to mark two milestones. One is completion of the national assessment on green transition readiness of Armenia, and the second is launching the planning phase of the project. So, as some of you may know, the project was a regional project, is a regional project, with Armenia, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine receiving similar support in assessing the green transition readiness of these countries, Eastern Partnership countries. It's funded by CEPA and implemented by the Stockholm Environment Institute. The AUA Acopian Center for the Environment was the implementing partner for the national assessment component. There's many phases, many things that happened, but we got involved in the national assessment phase, and we recruited some of the best experts in the country to help us with that. And going forward, AUA Acopian Center will be the national implementing partner. The project duration is 2023 to 2027. Key government partners are Ministry of Environment, Territorial Administration Infrastructure, and Economy. They're the direct beneficiaries. But we've also engaged ministries of high-tech industry, finance, education, science, culture, sports, education, science, culture, and sport, and the labor and social affairs. And you'll see why labor and social affairs is here, because a big challenge in green transition or any kind of transition is the justice aspect, fairness, equity aspect of it. So just transition is an important topic that this project will also address. So the goal of the GUMA project, if you will, Green Agenda Armenia, Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova, Armenia project, is to assist Armenia, these countries, and in our case specifically Armenia, in reaching green transition objectives, which include climate neutrality, biodiversity ecosystem conservation, pollution reduction and management, sustainable economic growth, and just transition. The project aims to achieve this goal by assessing the readiness of these countries and developing action plans, roadmaps, and then eventually also help with some specific investment plan development. The first phase of the project is over, and the full reports are available through these links. They're also available through the Green Agenda Armenia website, and probably I shouldn't show you, it's like too much time. But just photograph this, and you can go to the links. The executive summary is translated into Armenian, but the full report is 360 pages, so no way we're going to translate that. But so it's very comprehensive, very multi-sectoral, looking at issue in very many different perspectives, and it's a perfect discussion piece for the next phase of the project. In addition to this report preparation, in the first phase, SEI also produced a public perception study for Armenia, and that will be discussed later on today. So what do people think about green transition and the urgency or the relevance of green transition to Armenia? There was a communications impact study to see how governments in these four countries communicate reforms and how effective they are in communicating reforms. And that study will be shared with individual ministries and the press cadres of ministries. And then there's also a climate neutrality model that was developed, and informing policymakers, if you make this change, this is going to be the impact on GDP, this is going to impact on employment. So there's kind of a model that's developed. And in the second phase of the project, we'll house this in one or many places. It could be government agencies, it could be academic institutions, maybe even businesses are interested in looking at it. So, going forward, we're going to focus on work packages 2, 3, and 5. Work package 4 is not something we'll focus on because it's a little bit more aspirational. We'll see if we'll get there later on. And the second work package is going to be helping ministries, partner ministries, develop sectoral roadmaps and action plans. And then priority project or investment proposals will be work package 3. Technical assistance capacity building projects will be work package 5. I have to tell you already, in technical assistance, we'll be working with IUCN, one of our global partners on this project, the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And they'll be working with us in some of the capacity building and preparatory work for Road to COP17, which will take place in Armenia in 2026. That's the Biodiversity Convention's Conference of Parties. So Armenia is going to be on the global stage. And we want to make sure all elements of society that are participants are active in that area are very well informed about the global agenda, biodiversity agenda. This is not only an Armenia-specific initiative. The world is coming to discuss world issues. So we want to make sure our society is prepared for that. And on the technical assistance side, we will also be launching in July assistance to the Ministry of Environment to develop a chemical substances law for the Republic of Armenia in line with CEPA expectations, but also aligning with Eurasian Union's requirements. So that partnership, technical assistance will be delivered. SCI, Acopian Center, will be on the ground, and also CHEMI is the Swedish chemicals agency, will be providing the international expertise on that. Something about today's agenda before I invite Mr. Meimaryan to the podium. After the opening remarks, Ivana Mijatovic, who was the team lead for Armenia from the Stockholm Environment Institute, she'll present the main findings of the national assessment. And then brief Q&A, and then we'll, if there are any questions, and then we'll move on to the parallel sessions. And the parallel sessions would be, one will be held here, so you stay here if you're interested in finance for sustainability in the first breakout session. And one on environmental pollution will be in the Akian Gallery on the 4th floor of this building. I'll be the moderator for the environmental pollution because I prepared that part of the report, and David Manukyan, who prepared the finance part, will facilitate that. And there will be some student assistance in the process that will help. The main purpose, I want to highlight this, the main purpose of this discussion, or discussions, these breakout groups, is not to agree on facts or disagree on facts. We can always do that later on. It's to understand where are the priorities for the next phase. So if we're going to start planning for change, which one of the 7, 8 things on our recommendations is really a priority we should focus on? And ultimately, we want to select 3 top priorities for each of the thematic areas. And then at the end, the group will present the top priorities. This is the initiation, this is the start of our stakeholder engagement process on the second phase of the project. I have to say, we will listen very carefully to everyone. We will take everyone's thoughts into consideration, suggestions into consideration. The final decision of what the priority is will be a much more complex process of negotiating and understanding what the government priorities are and so on and so forth. So it will be a much more inclusive and iterative process. But we're hoping to wrap that up in 1 month. So that's time sensitive. And then the second parallel, then we'll have a lunch break, and there's a cafeteria downstairs. Has plenty of food. Please go get your lunch there. And there will be coffee breaks throughout, and there's coffee there. You can always go get coffee and a little bit of snack or something that's there. The second parallel session will start at 1:45, so the lunch is only 45 minutes long. And then there's two sessions. Biodiversity will be in the Aken Gallery, and this host of issues will be here. And you'll understand why we've clumped all these together. And then the parallel session on transport, mobility, and just transition will be, again, you can follow the agenda, you have the agenda. And then food systems, digitalization will be the last breakout sessions. After that, we have, I don't know if he's already here, Becca, are you here? Oh, hi, Becca, yes. Becca Parsadanishvili is senior researcher from ACT Global, is a research group from Georgia that did the public perception studies in all four republics. And he'll present the results of the Armenia public perception study. And closing plenary session will be here also, and we'll then present what the breakout groups thought the top priorities should be. And that would be a great start. Mr. Memarian, it's a pleasure to invite you to open this event, which we believe is very important for Armenia. Thank you.
Բարև ձեզ։ Նախ շատ շնորհակալություն Հայաստանի Ամերիկյան համալսարանին մեզ հյուրընկալելու համար այս կարևոր կոնֆերանսը։ Ողջունում եմ բոլորիդ, շնորհակալություն Շվեդիայի կառավարությանը եւ SIDA-ին այս կարևոր ծրագիրը Հայաստանում ֆինանսավորելու համար։ Ինչի է այս ծրագիրը կարևոր Հայաստանի համար։ Ես հենց նոր մտածում էի, թե ինչքան փոխկապակցված է ամեն ինչ Հայաստանում եւ ինչքան կարեւոր է, որ մեր եվրոպական գործընկերները եւ այս դեպքում Շվեդիայի կառավարությունը SIDA-ի գլխավորությամբ Հայաստանի կառավարության կողքին են եւ աջակցում են, որպեսզի Հայաստանը անցնի այն դժվար ճանապարհը, որը կոչվում է կանաչ փոխակերպում կամ կանաչ անցում, կամ եթե կուզենք տարբեր մասերի բաժանել, օրինակ էներգետիկ անկախություն, հա, այս պահին ինչ որ տեղի ունենում Հայաստանում շատ հեշտ է կապել այս ամեն ինչի հետ։ Եվ շատ կարևոր է, որ մենք ունենք նման լավ գործընկերներ մեր կողքին այս ճանապարհը անցնելու համար։ Հայաստանը հաստատել է իր ցածր ածխածնային երկարաժամկետ ռազմավարությունը մինչև 2050 թվական, որտեղ մենք ստանձնել ենք պարտավորություն, այդ թվում նաև Փարիզի համաձայնագրի ներքո, որ մինչև 2030 թվականը կկրճատենք ջերմոցային գազերը 1990 թվականի մակարդակի համեմատ 40 թվականով եւ 2050 թվականին կհասնենք ածխածնային նեյտրալիտետի։ Այդ ճանապարհը անցնելու համար հարկավոր է, որպեսզի յուրաքանչյուր ոլորտ իր ռազմավարությունների մեջ ներդնի եւ այնուհետեւ ծրագրեր իրականացնի, ռեալ ծրագրեր իրականացնի ցածր ածխածնային։ Եվ միայն այդպես եւ բավականին բարձր ֆինանսավորմամբ մենք կարող ենք անցնել այդ ճանապարհը եւ այստեղ է որ շատ կարեւոր է այն միջազգային փորձը եւ այն կարեւոր շորտքաթերը, որ կարող են ծրագիրը մեզ ներկայացնել եւ օգնել այդ ճանապարհը անցնել։ Ինչ շատ կներեք, ես մի քիչ վատառողջ եմ ալերգիայի մասով։ Ոստի շնորհակալություն այս ճանապարհին մեր կողքը կանգնելու համար։ Հաջորդ կարևոր մասը, որ ցանկանայի նշել, որ Հայաստանը մյուս տարի ընդունելու է կենսաբազմազանության մասին կոնվենցիայի կողմերի 17-րդ համաժողովը, ինչը Հայաստանի համար աննախադեպ մեծ միջոցառում է եւ աննախադեպ մեծ կարեւորության միջոցառում է, այն առումով, որ Հայաստանը գտնվում է աշխարհի ամենակարևոր կենսաբազմազանության կենտրոններից մեկում եւ շատ կարեւոր է մեր մասնակցությունը եւ այն գիտակցումը, որ մենք այդ մեծ գլոբալ աշխարհի մի մասն ենք կազմում, շատ կարեւոր եւ մեր ներդրումը պետք է ունենանք այդ կարեւոր համաժողովի հարցում։ Այստեղ տիկին Ֆրանսուয়া Ժակոբն է, ողջունում եմ ձեզ եւ մենք միասին ՄԱԿ-ի հետ, ՄԱԿ-ի քարտուղարության հետ կենսաբազմազանության ամեն օրյա աշխատանքով պատրաստվում ենք այդ միջոցառմանը եւ պատրաստվում ենք մեր ներդրումը ունենալ նախ ընդունելու այդ միջոցառումը 100 պատշաճի, հետո մեր ներդրումը ունենալ, որպեսզի աշխարհում ձևավորվի կոնսենսուս կենսաբազմազանության պահպանության համար։ Եվ հենց այստեղ էլ այս ծրագիրը նույնպես մեզ օգնում է։ Մենք արդեն փոփոխություններ ենք կատարել կենթանական աշխարհի մասին օրենքում, բուսական աշխարհի մասին օրենքը եւ բնության հատուկ պահպանվող տարածքների մասին օրենքը շրջանառվում է եւ արդեն ներկայացվել է կառավարության պետք է հաստատվի։ Կլիմայի փոփոխության դեմ պայքարի մասով մենք պատրաստվում ենք կլիմայի մասին օրենքը ներկայացնել կառավարության հաստատման այնուհետև ազգային ժողով։ Դեռ բավականին շատ անելիքներ կան air pollution-ը իջեցնելու մասով, ինչպես նաև թափոնների կառավարման մասով, եւ պարոն Ամիխանյանը արդեն բավականին շատ լավ բացատրեց ծրագիրը ինչ ոլորտներ է փակելու, շատ կարևոր է մեզ համար քիմիական թերի մասին օրենքը, որ բավականին հետ ենք այս մասով եւ կարևոր է որ ծրագիրը նույնպես մեզ կօգնի այդ հարցում։ Ոստի շնորհակալություն, ես փորձեցի ամբողջ լայն մի քիչ պատկերը ներկայացնել, թե ինչքան կապված է մեր ամենօրյա օրակարգը ծրագրի հետ եւ այն հանձնառությունը, որ Հայաստանի կառավարությունը ստանձնել է դեպի եվրոպական արժեքներ, դեպի եվրոպական միություն, այս ամբողջը դրա մասին է եւ շատ շնորհակալություն։
Էկոնոմիկայի նախարարությունից մարդ կա ստեղ։ Եղավ։ Ուրեմն անցնենք Mr. Klaus Waldenstrom, it's our pleasure to invite you, and once again from our side, thank you very much for the very generous support of the Swedish government for this very important initiative. Thank you.
Good morning, partners, friends. My name is Claes Waldenström, Head of Development Cooperation at the Swedish Embassy. It is my pleasure and honor to be with you here today to talk a little bit about the Green Armenia Project. First of all, thank you to Deputy Minister Memarian for our close collaboration, not only on this project, but also on other projects, which includes the restoration of Armenia's beautiful landscape, waste policy management, together with the American University here, and Alan and colleagues. So it's our pleasure to be here. Now, the project, as you've heard, is part of a regional initiative that includes Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. It's funded by us and led by Stockholm Environment Institute. And the aim here is to support these countries in making strides, hopefully big strides, towards ambitious goals of the European Green Deal and the green transition that the European Green Deal entails. And keyword here is opportunities, because as the Deputy Minister alluded to, it's not an easy path, but the reward is there. The opportunities greatly outweigh the challenges along the way. So, as the director said, today's conference marks 2 milestones in the project. First of all is the assessment report, which we will hear today, that provides strategic insights and priorities essential for enhancing climate action, biodiversity protection, pollution management, and other key green transition priorities. And these efforts also will help with Armenia's commitment to bringing itself ever closer to the European Union, its trade development, and everything else outlined in the CEPA agreement between Armenia and the European Union. So let me thank and acknowledge the comprehensive work of the Stockholm Environment Institute, the Acopian Center, of course, and also experts from the International Union for Conservation of Nature, which I believe has contributed greatly and offered critical support on research and analysis as part of this work. So you will hear more about the actual content of the report shortly, but in summary, it benchmarks Armenia's progress towards a green economy and EU alignment, measuring achievements and roadblocks in climate action, energy, buildings, industry, pollution, agriculture, transport, and biodiversity, which is no small feat. The report also highlights how finance, research, innovation, digitalization, and other things can accelerate sustainable, competitive, and resilient economic growth in Armenia. These are the opportunities I alluded to. So, the next phase, the second phase of the project, actually starts today. So, over the coming months, the team will develop sector-centric approaches, roadmaps, and action plans that will identify investment projects and capacity building activities. And these roadmaps and plans will then be used for informing government spending, hopefully, international donor activities, and private investments. So let me finish by saying that the Swedish government's support and commitment to Armenia's democratic development is strong and growing stronger. In just a few years in our economic cooperation, we have grown that cooperation to around $18 million annually, which takes us to the top partners, at least in financial terms and hopefully also in other terms. We do support all aspects of Armenia's resilience, be it democratic, economic, or as is in this case, environmental. And I hope that the findings of the report today will contribute to an even faster green transition in Armenia and the region, and also a big congratulations to Armenia for securing the COP. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the discussions.
So now we will go to Ms. Ivana Mijatovic, who was the team lead for Armenia on preparing this national assessment. And she'll present to us the main findings. It's a very extensive report with gazillion different sections. But she will summarize it in a way that is digestible. And then after that, we'll start the planning phase. And thank you, Ivana. Oh, by the way, she comes with an exceptional pedigree of work and related to green transition and supporting and EU enlargement. She was with the Minister of Environment in Croatia for a long time, and then a section of Croatia to the European Union, all the going through the environmental requirements and so on and so forth. So she knows what she's talking about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much for being here. I would first like to welcome again and thank you so much, Deputy Minister Marianne, for being with us. We already had a steering committee meeting this morning, and I would like to thank all the other participants who have joined us for this conference, and I hope that you will really enjoy it and you will take interesting insights from our conference and also from this report. So my name is Ivana Mijatovic. I was the team lead on the Armenian National Assessment Report process, and I will continue as the content lead in the next phases of the project. So if we move on to, I will not present this because Alan has already mentioned it. So I will focus really on the objectives and the scope of this national assessment. Alan has already mentioned it's a really big report, and you can see that there's been quite a lot of work invested in that project, where we really try to assess the best that we could. What is the really cross-sectoral readiness of Armenia in terms of European the Green Deal and the green transition? So a lot of Armenian experts have worked on this report, also SCI experts, and we really consulted various stakeholders in the process. Why am I mentioning this? Just so that you have an idea about the huge work that's behind this report, which was quite thorough examination of Armenians' readiness for green transition. And also the recommendations that I will present today are just some of the recommendations that we have in our report. I would all invite you to have a look at the report itself and also the executive summary, where you can find more recommendations and more details. If you're interested in some of the sectoral parts, Chapter 3 goes into detail for all of these sectors that I will go into a little bit further. And basically you can find a lot more information, a lot more data, and graphs so that you can have a bit more insight into what we basically talk about in the report. So basically this report really looks into thematic sectoral areas of the European Green Deal, which are climate change, circular economy with focus on waste management, environmental pollution, biodiversity ecosystems, energy, resource efficiency, building and renovation, sustainable food system, transport, and smart mobility. But we are also looking at cross-cutting issues, which are extremely important in supporting the whole transition, which are just transition, digital transformation, research and innovation, and sustainable finance. So the report goes into different areas to really assess how this readiness works out. So whether this is policy and legislative alignment, so really reviewing the existing policies and legislation in Armenia, and then looking at the institutional readiness. So what's the public capacity to really implement those reforms? And then non-institutional and private readiness by assessing the capacity of NGOs, of businesses, of academia, and other non-institutional actors. And then it provides an overall country green transition readiness. So we are looking at sectors, cross-cutting issues, and then delivering a green transition score, which should serve really as a guidance to develop planning phase that comes next. And this is something that Alan has gone into quite a detail, but basically next phase should be about providing sectoral roadmaps, action plans, and developing concrete project proposals for donor community. In terms of methodological framework, we really use the European Green Deal as the benchmark. So against all of these green transition objectives that are set in the EU policies and legislation, but also the agreement that Armenia has with the EU, and looking also at other international fora and obligations that Armenia has. We also looked at the 8 Environment Action Programme and its objective and targets that are guiding European environmental policy until 2030. The third EU reference policy was obviously EU environmental and climate policy framework, but we also looked at other acquis or the legislation of the EU where relevant. And all of this was done in relation to EU-Armenia Comprehensive and Enhanced Partnership Agreement, as already mentioned. In terms of structure, each of these thematic areas goes into providing information on status and trends, so to provide some context to understand the main environmental issues of the team. Then we identify main enabling conditions. And basically this is very important because it provides you with an idea where the progress can be made. And in some issues, it can be made quite fast. Some of these issues can be resolved quite simply. EU approximation, how close is country to EU's governance policy and legislation? So we looked at what you already transposed, but we didn't go into detail approximation. So this report was not about that. Then we identified main priorities And these are from gaps and needs that we identified under the main enabling conditions. And this is something that you will be discussing today in parallel session, where we will provide some of the main priorities and give you opportunity to discuss them among yourselves. And as Alan said, come with 3 top priorities. But we have to say that the rest of the priorities will also be there, and this will be at the end made available for all the stakeholders to have a look. And then we provided our assessment of readiness to green transition. And in the end chapter, we provided some conclusions or the pathways, how these can be taken forward. So in terms of the key findings on green transition, this is our assessment that Armenia is at an early stage of developing its readiness for green transition, and we identified both strengths and weaknesses, with levels of readiness varying from sector to sector, which you will see in my next slide because it provides a really nice table with all of these scoring. Obviously, Armenia faces challenges that are hindering process, and these are some of the challenges are here. Some are also, or additional ones have been mentioned in the executive summary and the report itself. So we looked at the insufficient policy framework, limited access to green technologies and solutions, lack of coordination between sectors, a limited awareness and education on green issues, and resistance to change from traditional industries, which also happens in other countries, as you're pretty well aware. So addressing these barriers is crucial to ensuring that the transition really is sustainable, that greener economy is available, and it's also equitable for all the stakeholders. I will show you our table. So you could see it goes from little to some progress, and it kind of half-half across the sectors. So I will go now into some of the recommendations covering each of these sectors. As I said, more information is available in the report itself, so don't think that we haven't thought about other recommendations, but these are sort of some of the most important ones. So in climate action, already quite a lot has been done. We heard from Deputy Minister already some of the progress, and he mentioned also that Armenia is now preparing its next NDC ahead of the COP in Brazil. So we are looking forward to seeing that. And that the climate change law is really in the process for being submitted for the parliament. So this really would provide a robust regulatory framework, which would include also how to finance the sector, so including the fiscal tools, but providing a quantitative target, which Armenia does not yet have. The quantitative target is there in the NDC, but not in the legislative framework. This also has the potential to mitigate the cross-border adjustment mechanism of the EU. Some of you might already know about it. It's basically a mechanism that EU has already introduced, but so far it's only about the reporting for the importers of products in cement, steel, electricity, that will have to pay the price of carbon when they import to the EU markets. But also then carbon tax schemes that would alleviate these issues, and other incentives, including the mainstreaming and sectoral policy coordination. Sustainable transitional funding should be secured because Armenia, not just in this sector, but in other sectors as well, depends quite a lot on international financing, and Armenia NDC long-term financing strategy is a very good example, because if adopted, it could improve the situation in the sector. And I already mentioned carbon tax impacts, so this is something that is worth exploring. Investing in enhancing role of NGOs, civil society, and media in green transition, which will make the green transition much easier and much more understandable. We will hear later about the public perception study, which is quite interesting, because 77% of people who were surveyed for our poll are quite concerned about climate change in Armenia. We go to circular economy with a focus on waste management, because waste management in Armenia is quite important, has a very important role. So what we focused here is really establishing the clear mandates and division of responsibilities of the bodies that are actually involved in that now, so that the interagency collaboration is improved and policy implementation is streamlined. Giving ownership of the green transition agenda to a deputy prime minister is likely to help with interagency coordination. But also providing technical guidance, training, financial resources to local authorities is paramount, because this will enable them to implement effective waste management and circular economy initiatives. And obviously the focus here is also on the robust data collection and reporting mechanisms, because then they can help really track progress you're making. Developing financial mechanisms and policy instruments to make circular practices cost-effective, creating tax incentives, grants, or low-interest loans to encourage investment in circular business model technologies and infrastructure will take it much further. In terms of environmental pollution, this is again a very broad area which covers air quality, water management, soil and land degradation, and chemicals. So we are mentioning some of the recommendations here, not all of them. We have quite a lot more in the report itself. So we thought that prioritizing monitoring system and registers for these sectors is extremely important, because it will improve transparency and public engagement. Strengthening the capacity of expert bodies that are involved in measuring and reporting will also enhance the country's ability to take timely action. But strengthening regulatory reforms and enforcement mechanism is equally important. We looked at also establishing functional emissions testing and enforcement system for vehicles, providing financial incentives, tax breaks, and this is something that we also mention in transport and smart mobility. Increasing public awareness of environmental health risks would really encourage related behavioral changes. So the more people are aware of the risk posed, really provides them with more incentives to be engaged and to also have individual actions. Developing a comprehensive and cross-sectoral water strategy, which is aligned with the Comprehensive Water Framework Directive, is one of the measures that we are proposing, which would also strengthen coordination between key institutions. We mentioned enhancing the transboundary water cooperation, particularly with Georgia and Iran, to secure shared water resources and improve water management. And then investing in infrastructure to reduce water losses and improve efficiency in agriculture and municipal sectors. And these upgrades of irrigation system is not just for agriculture, is also really good to increase your resilience to climate change. When we now move to biodiversity and ecosystems, we also heard from Deputy Minister there's a lot of progress has been made in this area, including on the strategic documents, but we have a recommendation that this is taken a step further and align with EU Birds and Habitats Directive and the new biodiversity strategy and nature restoration regulation with quantitative targets that it includes. But also, again, something that has been mentioned by Deputy Minister is COP17 under the Convention on Biological Diversity in 26, and this should really be used to provide additional impetus to accelerate progress in this sector. What we also thought was very important is creating a unified national biodiversity monitoring and inventory system and encouraging innovation in the sector, and increasing biodiversity budget allocation to address long-term conservation and restoration needs, and reduce dependence on funding from international donors, but this is something that we've seen across sectors. On energy, again, as you will see, or you're already seeing it, that there are certain topics that are popping up in each of these sectors, which is really providing the enhancing the ability of government agencies to implement and monitor energy policies. I will be, yes, especially in line with CEPA, and then yes, looking into other recommendations that we have, including the strengthening of national standards. I have to take it a bit faster. So you will have the presentation and can look into details, and I will move into buildings and renovation. Just to mention, again, alignment with EU directives and developing a national building renovation strategy and action plan and providing financial support to that plan, and strengthening the educational and vocational training. So I'm picking up on things that are basically popping up in each of these sectors. On sustainable food systems, obviously prioritizing sustainable practices is a very good approach, and this is not just in food processing but also in sustainable land and water management measures, and leveraging climate smart practices which will not just boost productivity but enhance resilience to climate change. Aligning legal and policy frameworks with the EU standards, because this is something that is not yet included in your CEPA agreement, so that will improve the situation in the sector quite a lot. Again, looking at a well-coordinated transportation strategy that would involve all the relevant stakeholders, developing sustainable mobility infrastructure, and that would include not just public transport but also rail infrastructure. Boosting the technical institutional capacity and providing education and public awareness to drive behavioral change. I will just go quickly into cross-cutting issues. So these are just transition, which is extremely important because you want to really ensure equitable transition for all the groups that might be left out while the green transition is being implemented, including establishing a coordinated just transition framework and ensuring investing in capacity building and inclusive participation. For the digitalization, really working on the revised national digitalization strategies, ensuring standardized data ecosystems, and ensuring public engagement. Nationwide, for research and development, again, having a national research and innovation strategy that is aligned with green transition goals, and providing for institutional capacity and funding mechanisms, and also ensuring that you're better using the funds that are already available, including the Horizon Europe. And this is my last slide, so just a couple of words on the finance for green transition. These are the numbers that basically look quite big, but most of it is required for renewables, energy efficiency, sustainable agricultural resilient infrastructure, and our assessment is that up to 75 will come from private sector. Having unified green financing strategy, and this is something that we've seen in one of the slides, first slides on climate change, having the NDC strategy in place adopted, that would already provide quite a good start. To provide also for sector-specific investment and strong enabling environment for private finance. You already have green taxonomy developed. This needs to be adopted, but it's also about green procurement, environmental taxation, monitoring system, and closing all of these gaps is critical to unlock sustainable finance that you need to reach your climate and development goals. And so thank you so much for your attention. I know it's been a bit long, but you cannot, shorten 365-page report too much shorter than this. If there are any questions, I'm here. Also, I'll be here the whole day. So if you want to ask questions or talk about something that is related to green transition, please go ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's just amazing how you were able to wrap up 360 pages in such a small time period. Okay, guys, we need to run into our breakout sessions. So those who are interested in finance, stay here. Those who are interested in environmental pollution, let's go to the 4th floor of this building and in the Akian Gallery, room 433, which is in the middle part of the next wing. Okay? Thank you.